The underestimated armada. The celestial sovereign drifted in high orbit above Earth, its crystalline hull shimmering with iridescent energy that rippled across its 15-kilometer length. Supreme Commander Vexhair stood on the command deck, his forearms folded across his chest as he gazed down at the blue planet. His scaled skin glinted under the ambient lighting, metallic red patterns shifting across deep purple flesh. "This is their homeworld?" he asked, mandibles clicking with barely contained amusement. "Quaint." Strategic analyst Zenora approached, her willowy frame almost translucent in the ship's light. "The Terran delegation approaches, Supreme Commander. 3 vessels, as agreed upon." Vexhair's upper eyes blinked in surprise while his lower pair remained fixed on the view screen. "Those are warships. They look like mining vessels." He leaned forward, watching the approaching human ships. In comparison to the majesty of the celestial sovereign, they appeared as little more than metallic beetles, boxy and utilitarian with none of the elegant biocrystalline architecture that defined Galactic Alliance engineering. Primitive propulsion systems, offered Chief Engineer Maldrek, his tentacles manipulating the holographic display to highlight the human vessels. Primarily chemical thrusters with rudimentary fusion assistance, their hulls appeared to be simple metal alloys, titanium composites, mostly. Scan indicates minimal energy shielding, barely enough to deflect minor radiation. Weapons systems. He paused, twin gill slits fluttering in what passed for laughter among his species. Projectile-based. "They fire metal slugs, Commander. Metal slugs." The command deck erupted in ripples of amusement. Even the normally stoic Zenora's skin flushed with color patterns indicating humor. "They'd been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries, Vexhair mused, yet they petitioned so aggressively for Alliance membership. I expected more. The Council granted their petition based on their biological diversity and unusual planetary resources, Zenora reminded him, not their military capabilities, though they do claim to have successfully defended their system from multiple extraplanetary threats. Vexhair's mandibles clicked dismissively. Anyone can make claims. Prepare to receive their delegation. Let's be diplomatic. 6 hours later, the human delegation stood in the vast reception hall of the Celestial Sovereign. Fleet Admiral Helena Chen kept her expression carefully neutral as Alliance dignitaries circled, examining the humans with poorly disguised condescension. Beside her, Ambassador Idris Okafor and Chief Science Officer Wei Zhang maintained similar composure. Supreme Commander Vexhair towered over them, his forearm salute deliberately exaggerated. "Welcome aboard the pride of the Galactic Alliance 7th Fleet. I trust your journey was comfortable in your vessels." "Quite comfortable, thank you," Admiral Chen replied evenly. "The silent thunder serves Earth well." "Silent thunder," Vexhair repeated, mandibles vibrating with amusement. A grand name for such a modest craft. Ambassador Okafor stepped forward. "We appreciate the Alliance's consideration of Earth's petition for membership. We have much to offer and much to learn." "Indeed you do," Engineer Maldrek interjected, tentacles coiling. "Your propulsion systems alone are centuries behind Alliance standards. We detected you from 12 light minutes away from the thrust emissions alone. In wartime, that would be," he gestured with a damp tentacle, "problematic." Wei Zhang smiled slightly. "We find our technology adequate for our current needs, though we're always eager to advance." "Come," Vexhair said, turning abruptly. "Let us show you what real spacefaring technology looks like." The tour lasted nearly 5 hours, each chamber of the Alliance flagship more impressive than the last. The humans were shown weapon systems capable of shattering small moons, propulsion technology that bent spacetime, and defensive systems that could withstand the heart of a star. At each demonstration, Alliance officers waited expectantly for gasps of amazement or admissions of inferiority. The human delegation remained politely interested but offered little reaction beyond thoughtful questions. "Your limited response is puzzling," Zenora finally said as they observed the ship's quantum navigation array. Do you not comprehend the technological gap between us? Admiral Chen smiled thinly. We comprehend many things, strategic analyst Zenora. During the formal reception that followed, Alliance officers continued their subtle barrage of condescension. A group cornered Chief Science Officer Zhang near a refreshment station. Your hull metallurgy is particularly fascinating, said a scientific officer with glowing appendages. We abandoned such materials a millennium ago. The structural integrity must be a constant concern. We've had few complaints, Zhang replied, sipping a luminescent beverage. And those weapon systems, exclaimed another officer, skin pulsing with mirth. Projectile weapons in space. Do you aim by sight? Zhang placed her glass down carefully. We hit what we aim at. Across the chamber, Admiral Chen found herself engaged with Vex Hare and several fleet commanders. The Alliance officers were discussing recent skirmishes with a species from the galactic rim known as the Nexari. Their stealth technology has proven challenging, admitted a commander with crystal growths protruding from his skull. 3 outposts lost in the past cycle. They somehow mask their quantum signature. Primitive species often develop unexpected adaptations, Vex Hare said dismissively. But the 7th Fleet will soon put an end to their incursion. He turned to Admiral Chen. I imagine your Earth vessels would struggle even to detect a Nexari ship, let alone engage one. Chen's expression remained neutral. Perhaps, though sometimes old solutions work for new problems. As the reception concluded, Vex Hare escorted the human delegation back to their docking bay. We've transmitted our full assessment to the Alliance Council, he said, his tone magnanimous. Despite your technological limitations, we'll support your petition for probationary membership. Admiral Chen bowed slightly. Most generous, Supreme Commander. Next time, Vex Hare added, perhaps we can visit your Earth, see these famous defense systems you claim have protected your world. It would be educational. We would welcome such a visit, Ambassador Okafor replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Though we hope it would be under peaceful circumstances. As the airlock sealed behind them, the human delegation maintained their diplomatic composure until safely aboard their ship. Once in the Silent Thunder's secure conference room, Admiral Chen finally allowed herself a small smile. Their arrogance is even worse than intelligence suggested, Ambassador Okafor said, loosening his formal collar. Did you get what we needed, Wei? Chen asked. Chief Science Officer Zhang nodded, her fingers dancing across a nondescript panel. Complete scans of their propulsion, weapons, and communication systems. Their cybersecurity is as overconfident as they are. Their dismissal of us works to our advantage, Chen noted. They showed us far more than they realized. A communications officer interrupted with an urgent tone. Admiral, we're receiving an emergency transmission. Alliance Outpost Helios has gone dark. The 7th Fleet has been ordered to investigate immediately. The 3 exchanged meaningful glances. And so it begins, Chen said softly. 2 weeks later, the situation had deteriorated dramatically. The Nexari, previously considered a minor nuisance, had launched a full-scale offensive against Alliance territory. 6 outposts had been completely destroyed, and 3 colony worlds were under siege. The 7th Fleet, pride of the Alliance, had engaged the enemy 3 times with increasingly concerning results. On the command deck of the Celestial Sovereign, Supreme Commander Vex Hare stared at the tactical display with all 4 eyes widened in disbelief. How? He demanded, slamming a fist against the crystalline console. How are they penetrating our shields so easily? Strategic analyst Zenora's normally translucent skin had paled to an almost ghostly white. Their weapons technology has evolved, Commander. They're using some form of phase-shifted energy that bypasses our harmonic defenses. 3 more ships lost in the Irandi engagement. The cruiser Luminous Dawn was completely destroyed with all hands. Engineer Maldrek's tentacles writhed anxiously. We've attempted to recalibrate our shields, but the Nexari adapt faster than we can adjust. They're learning our systems, exploiting weaknesses we didn't know existed. The Nexari were nothing. Vexhair hissed. Rim-dwelling scavengers. How did they suddenly develop technology that rivals our own? No one on the command deck had an answer. A communications officer broke the tense silence. "Commander, we're receiving a distress call from the colony world Nixora. The Nexari have broken through the orbital defenses. 20 million civilians are at risk." Vexhair's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "The 7th can't respond. We're still repairing damage from the last engagement, and the 5th and 3rd fleets are deployed at Arandi and Talaris." "Sir," Zinora said hesitantly, "Nixora is 3 light days from the Sol system." The command deck fell silent. Vexhair stared at the tactical display, his scaled features hardening. "Send the communication," he finally ordered, voice tight with suppressed frustration. "Request assistance from Earth." On the 3rd planet of the Sol system, Admiral Chen read the Alliance distress call twice before setting the tablet down on her desk. Outside her office window, the vast shipyards of Luna Base stretched across the lunar surface, alive with activity that had been carefully hidden during the Alliance delegation's visit. She opened a secure channel. "Why, Idris, you've seen the transmission." Their faces appeared on her screen, nodding grimly. 20 million civilians, Ambassador Okafor said. "Whatever our feelings about Alliance arrogance, we can't ignore this." "Agreed," Chen replied. "And there's the strategic consideration. Nixara falls, Proxima Centauri is next in line. This fight is coming to our doorstep either way." "Our intelligence on the Nexari capabilities?" Zhang asked. "Limited, but the Alliance data helps. They're adaptive, learning. Each engagement makes them stronger." Chen's expression hardened. Time to show what those primitive human ships can really do. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Chen to all Earth Defense Force vessels. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Battle Groups 1 through 7, prepare for immediate deployment. Revelation protocols are authorized." Across the solar system, ships that the Alliance had never seen, had never detected, powered up their systems, and prepared for war. Revelation of power. Governor Telix of Nixara Colony stood in the half-collapsed command center, azure blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Through shattered windows, he could see the capital city burning, Nexari dropships descending through clouds thick with smoke and debris. The colony's defenses had collapsed in hours, Alliance orbital platforms destroyed with surgical precision. "Last communication from the Alliance 7th Fleet," his aide reported, voice trembling. "They cannot reach us in time. They've requested assistance from Earth." Telix laughed bitterly. "Earth? Those primitives with their metal ships and projectile weapons. We're doomed." The communications array crackled suddenly. "Governor Telix, this is Admiral Helena Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've received your distress call and are responding. Please transmit current Nexari positions and civilian shelter locations." Telix stared at the console in disbelief. How quickly can you reach us?" There was a pause before Chen's calm voice returned. "Governor, Earth forces are already entering your system. First elements will reach Nixara orbit in 17 minutes. The command center fell silent. Nixara was 3 light days from Earth. Even with Alliance quantum-fold technology, the journey should take hours, not minutes. 16 minutes later, proximity alarms blared throughout the command center. Telix rushed to the sensor displays, expecting to see more Nexari warships. Instead, the screen showed something impossible. A massive spatial distortion forming in high orbit, a tear in the fabric of space-time itself. From this wound in reality emerged ships unlike anything in the Alliance database. They were angular and predatory, their hulls a deep matte black that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. No energy signatures registered on Alliance scans, no propulsion emissions, no shield harmonics. They were ghosts, phantoms materializing from nowhere. "Impossible. whispered Telex's chief scientist. "They're completely invisible to quantum detection, but that would require—" "Governor," interrupted the communications officer, "the human vessels are hailing the Nexari fleet. On all frequencies, in all languages." Admiral Chen's voice echoed. "Attention Nexari forces. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are engaged in hostilities against civilians under Alliance protection. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The response was predictable, a barrage of Nexari energy weapons directed at the nearest human vessels. The attacks, which had torn through Alliance shields like paper, splashed harmlessly against the dark hulls, energy dissipating into nothingness. In the Nixaren command center, jaws dropped as they witnessed what came next. The human ships didn't fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, pinpoints of light winked from their hulls, small, almost insignificant flashes. Moments later, Nexari vessels simply ceased to exist, torn apart by forces invisible to the naked eye. "What are we seeing?" demanded Telex. "What weapons are they using?" The science officer stared at his readouts in disbelief. "They're using kinetic impactors, hyper-accelerated projectiles. But they're moving at— this can't be right. Relativistic speeds, nearly light speed. Bullets," Telex said incredulously. "They're using bullets." "Not bullets as you understand them, Governor," the scientist corrected, eyes wide with realization. "Mass drivers, railguns of unprecedented power. A single projectile at that velocity carries the energy of a tactical nuclear device." On the battlefield above Nixara, the Nexari fleet was in chaos. Their adaptive shields, designed to counter energy weapons, provided no defense against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Ships were shredded from bow to stern, kinetic energy converting to explosive force on impact. Those Nexari vessels that attempted to retreat found their escape routes blocked by more human ships appearing from spatial tiers, having somehow predicted their withdrawal vectors. In the Silent Thunder's command center, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Status report," she ordered. 92% of Nexari vessels neutralize, her tactical officer reported. "No casualties on our side. Minimal ammunition expenditure. Ground forces, Marines deploying now. We're using the Phantoms for surgical strikes on Nexari ground positions." Chen nodded. The Phantoms, exoatmospheric drop infantry with powered armor, were another technology Earth had kept hidden. Unlike the bulky, crystalline battlesuits of the Alliance, human combat armor was sleek, carbon nanotube weave with integrated jump systems that allowed soldiers to transition from orbit to ground without vessels. "Admiral," her communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from the Celestial Sovereign. Supreme Commander Vexhair is requesting permission to enter the Nixara system." Chen allowed herself a thin smile. "Permission granted. Suggest they approach with recognition signals active. Our targeting systems are fully automated." 6 hours later, the Nexari threat had been eliminated from Nixara. Civilian casualties were minimal, and Alliance colonial infrastructure was largely intact. When the Celestial Sovereign finally arrived, Supreme Commander Vexhair found himself in the unprecedented position of being invited aboard a human vessel. The Silent Thunder's interior was nothing like what Vexhair had seen during the Earth delegation's visit. Gone was the utilitarian simplicity, replaced with advanced systems that hummed with quiet efficiency. Holographic displays showed real-time battle data with clarity surpassing Alliance technology. Officers moved with practiced precision, their demeanor professional and confident. Admiral Chen met him in a conference room that, while modest in size, contained technology that made the Supreme Commander's 4 eyes blink rapidly in assessment. "This," he gestured around, mandibles clicking in agitation, "is not what we observed in our earlier encounter." "No," Chen agreed simply. "It isn't. You deceived us," Vexhair accused. "Showed us obsolete vessels, hid your true capabilities. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. Chen corrected. Earth has learned through hard experience not to reveal all its strengths upon first contact. Zinora, who had accompanied her commander, studied the tactical displays with newfound respect. Your ships, they have no quantum signature. Our sensors couldn't detect them until they were physically visible. Quantum stealth, Chen confirmed. A technology we developed after our first extraterrestrial conflict 2 centuries ago. And those weapons, Engineer Maldrek said, tentacles rippling with excitement rather than derision now. Kinetic impactors at relativistic speeds. The energy requirements alone should be prohibitive, Chen suggested, perhaps with your power systems. Vexhair's scales flushed with color patterns indicating embarrassment. The Alliance has never encountered technology like this, your defensive capabilities alone. Metaphysic ablative armor, Chen supplied. It disperses energy attacks across 11 dimensions simultaneously. The Nexari weapons never actually touched our hulls. And your method of arrival, Zinora pressed. Not quantum folding. Something else. We call it slip space, Chen said. Creating temporary corridors through subspace rather than bending space-time. Vexhair's posture had completely transformed from his earlier arrogance. His 4 arms were now held close to his body, a sign of respect in his culture. Why hide these capabilities? He asked finally. With such technology, Earth could have demanded membership in the Alliance Council itself, not mere probationary status. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened slightly. Humanity has encountered 5 different alien species before the Alliance, Commander. 3 of those encounters were hostile. We've learned to be cautious in revealing our capabilities. The projectile weapons, Maldrek interjected, realization spreading across his features. You deliberately showcased outdated technology because advanced civilizations always expect advanced energy weapons. Chen finished for him. They develop defenses accordingly. But few prepare for kinetic weapons of sufficient velocity. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective, especially when enhanced by new technology. Vexhair was silent for a long moment. The Alliance owes Earth a debt for Nixara, he finally said. 20 million lives saved. I will personally recommend immediate full membership status rather than probationary. Chen nodded in acknowledgement. We appreciate that, Commander. But more importantly, we need to discuss the Nexari. This attack was too coordinated, their technological advancement too sudden. Our analysis suggests external influence. You believe someone else is supporting them? Zinora asked sharply. We believe they're being used as proxies in a test of Alliance defenses, Chen replied, activating a holographic display showing patterns of Nexari attacks. These aren't random strikes. They're probing actions, designed to gauge response capabilities and adaptation rates. The Alliance officers studied the display with growing concern, seeing the pattern that had eluded them. If you're right, Vexhair said slowly, then the Nexari are merely the first wave. Yes, Chen agreed grimly, and humanity would prefer to face what comes next with allies rather than alone. Vexhair straightened to his full height, performing a 4-armed salute that lacked any trace of his earlier condescension. The Alliance misjudged Earth, Admiral Chen. We will not make that mistake again. 2 months later, on the central world of the Galactic Alliance, the Council chambers were filled to capacity as Earth was formally granted full membership status, the fastest ascension in Alliance history. The Silent Thunder hung in orbit alongside the Celestial Sovereign, both vessels now flagship partners in the newly formed Joint Defense Initiative. In engineering labs across Alliance space, human and alien scientists worked together, combining technologies that neither could have developed alone. On frontier worlds, human Marines trained Alliance forces in asymmetric warfare tactics and adaptive response. And deep in classified facilities on Earth, Admiral Chen reviewed intelligence reports of unusual activity beyond the galactic rim, preparing for the storm that both human and Alliance analysts now believed was coming. The insignificant fleet that had once been laughed at now stood at the vanguard of the galaxy's defense, their primitive projectile weapons and simplistic hulls revealed as one of the most sophisticated fighting forces the Alliance had ever encountered. As Chen liked to remind her new Alliance colleagues, appearances could be deceiving, especially when they were designed to be. The universe would learn this lesson again soon enough.